In extreme working environments, personnel safety is paramount. Today we'll look at 3 potential hazards faced by workers during offshore flaring operations on oil and gas rigs, some of the most challenging workplaces in the world. During flaring operations, the burning of petrochemicals and hydrocarbons results in high temperatures, intense light emission and potentially injurious levels of industrial noise. The 3 main hazards that relate to flaring are heat stress, noise injuries and flare glare. With the correct use of effective personal protective equipment, you can do your bit to guard against these hazards, but PPE alone is not enough. Due to the extreme levels of thermal radiation created during the process, all rigs should be kitted out with a heat suppression safety system before commencing flaring operations as a primary form of protection. RigCool heat suppression safety systems are comprised of 3 layers of protection to ensure the safety of both personnel and equipment. The boom system is positioned on the boom, close to the burner head to provide the first stage of heat attenuation or reduction. The large volumes of seawater converted to a fine spray by the boom system smart nozzles means this first layer attenuates thermal radiation by 90%, while at the same time greatly reducing the amount of water required at rigside. Today's modern, cleaner burning, high flow rate burner heads create such high levels of radiant heat that a second and third layer are required to guarantee total safety. The second layer of protection is the rigside array, which consists of a series of smaller 1.5-inch smart nozzles strategically positioned to ensure that safe levels of transmissivity are maintained for both equipment and personnel. Extensive pre-flaring simulation and scenario modelling is backed up with real-time tests during flaring, with our fully trained technicians using flare radiometers and laser thermometers to identify hotspots and confirm safe operating temperatures. For more sensitive equipment positioned adjacent to the flare boom, a final protective layer is installed for total safety system integrity. Thermal radiation reflective blankets, as with the first 2 layers, have a heat transmissivity rating of 0.1, meaning they remove 90% of any remaining thermal radiation. In many cases, activating a RigCool heat suppression safety system can result in ambient air temperatures rigside that are actually lower than before flaring commenced. So, a RigCool heat suppression safety system is a rig worker's best friend, but there are still a few hazards for you to consider during flaring operations. The first is heat stress, a very real problem in high temperature working environments. Some of the symptoms of heat stress include fatigue, headaches, lack of concentration, moist skin and muscle cramps. In order to reduce heat stress, personnel are recommended to wear breathable protective clothing, drink water frequently in small amounts and take periodic rest breaks in cooler conditions. In high heat and tropical conditions, rig workers should drink roughly 2 litres of water per hour to replace lost fluids. An easy way to assess your level of hydration is by using a urine colour comparison chart, which is readily available through safety organisations. Next up are noise injuries. There are plenty of long-term injuries that can be prevented with the use of simple PPE. 85 decibels, or the level of sound inside a car in city traffic, is considered to be the maximum safe level of exposure for an 8-hour shift. Sound levels during offshore flaring can typically exceed 100 decibels, so protection is recommended to avoid injuries. Just remember to have your hearing protection in place before exposure to noise occurs. And finally, there's flare glare. As with brazing, torch cutting or welding, flaring operations create potentially injurious optical radiation. Precautions should be taken at all times to protect against both direct and incidental light exposure. For the types of glare-related light exposure common on oil and gas rigs, the recommended minimum level of protection should be Spectacles Class 1B with side and radiation protection. RigCool are committed to your safety, and all this information is provided in a convenient format on our offshore safety cards, which are made available to all rig personnel before flaring operations commence. RigCool pride themselves on providing the most effective heat suppression safety systems available today. Their extensive training, research and modelling, combined with real-world experience, means rigside lives and assets are protected during offshore flaring operations. A RigCool safety system, coupled with your own due diligence and use of appropriate PPE, will ensure that essential flaring operations are completed productively and safely. So be smart, be safe and stay cool with RigCool. Visit the RigCool website for more information about heat suppression safety systems.